Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick. I'm the founder and the CEO of Pod. Welcome to another amazing episode of the podcast. Today, we're starring the busiest man in the sales game, a guy that gives his time to everyone that wants to hear his great advices and he wants to support the one and only Neil Weitzman. Welcome, Neil.
Wow, I need to hire you for intros. That was amazing.
As I
Thank
was
you.
thinking about it, I was thinking about the commercial with the Corona saying the hottest or the most popular man ever. And I'm like, I'm with the
Oh
busiest man
God.
ever. So
If only any of that. I mean, busy, yeah. I mean, I beg people to work with me, but yeah, busy. But I'm not sure about the rest of that stuff. But yes, thank you, and excited as hell to talk with you again.
absolutely. Well, let me go through a bit of your credentials and your experience to tell people who is going to be joining us today. So a few things: go-to-market operator, fractional CRO, investor, advisor. You started, going through the ranks as a seller, moved into a fractional CRO role. Now you founded your own consultancy and advisory firm, Weitzman Go-to-Market. You're helping CEOs scale their businesses with hands-on go-to-market execution. I know you're very, very passionate about communities. This is how we initially met with C100,
Yeah.
but you founded PORCH, a community for immigrant entrepreneurs. You're involved in Pavilion as a chapter lead for the fractional CRO folks. Like I mentioned, you're an investor and an advisor to many startups, and you've been Pod's first advisor back in 2022, which has been an amazing ride. Does that
Yeah.
capture it all? Am I missing anything?
Oh, I mean, I could go on and on. No, that's more than enough. I mean, that's a good job. Yeah. I mean, I'm all those things, and maybe I should be focused more. But I love where I am in my life and career, and it's probably best said by just saying it's just an absolute honor to work for CEOs to choose me to work with them, whether it's in a fractional capacity or Patrick with you as an advisor. I treat all of that as an absolute honor that a CEO would trust me to work with them. So yeah, I love it. I love the
Oh, yeah.
journey, and I love working with Pod and you, and excited to be part of it. A little piece of it anyway.
I love it. I'll have to say that even if you do a lot of different things, you always bring your 100% to each of them. So I raise my
Thank you.
hat to that. So let's jump in. Maybe as a way to kick things off, tell us a bit about the sales genesis of Neil in the sales world, right? What initially got you into sales, and most importantly, what keeps you going, right? Years into the game.
Yeah, I love it. Excuse me. Two separate things, I guess. I mean, I didn't start out in pure sales. I kind of have a salesy personality, and
Oh, do you?
at least from a stereotypical type of view, anyway. Um, so you might think I've been in sales for 50 years, type of thing, and but no, I started out more in data and analytics and research and customer service, working at a company called Nielsen for many, many years. So a lot of who I am today came from understanding and being very data driven, which I think bodes well for me as a sales revenue marketing leader. Very, very important to say the least. So yeah, I kind of came into sales as I was coming up, and it my first role wasn't sales. I actually grew up as more of an account manager type that did a little bit of sales while I was managing relationships. And then I was did well enough that I got bigger and bigger roles and became an executive and ran departments. And as I did that, I took on significant responsibility around revenue and P&L and budget and so on. And then I became more focused on revenue and sales in different roles I took. So love that. I'm
Yeah.
very grateful for my journey. I probably stayed in some places a little too long and others a little too short. You can always look back and say, if I had another go at it, what would you differently? But I feel blessed and lucky that I am where I am. And yeah,
Do you miss the customer service or a bit more account management days?
I think it's an interesting topic. I'm not sure I miss it. I feel very passionate that a lot of companies these days don't do a good job of it. And I don't know, and I'm not pointing fingers anywhere, but I get the sense it's because a lot of companies, at least that I see and that I work with, are maybe they're founder led, early stage, and they're focused on growth and product. And it seems like the customer service mentality, how do you onboard someone effectively? How do you service them properly? It really seems like it's been an afterthought, at least what I see out in the marketplace these days. Yeah. And I think that's a big problem, and I think it's getting worse. It's a whole different discussion we can have, but yeah, since you brought it up, yeah, that is something that I've noticed a lot of, that I think a lot of early stage companies miss the boat on that. And it's problematic.
That's interesting. I've seen a shift in the past, I'd say 2-3 years, especially I think with VC backed startups, from thinking about growth, right? Top line revenue growth, and thinking a lot more about NDR, net dollar retention. And I think that will ultimately push organizations to think a lot more about not just customer support, customer service, customer success, and like the full journey, to say like, hey, once you, as a seller, once you close the deal, it's actually only the beginning of the relationship officially. And how do we think as an organization to better handle that part of this function?
I agree. And I think the metrics drive it to some degree. However, it's even before that. I think it's not that people need to necessarily I think it's more that it's how you say what you say. Right? So, I work with a company and I ask a question, and the answer they give is focused on their business, not on solving my problem. Like, do X, and do X because X makes them better. But that's nothing to do with helping me. And so I think it's there's a lot of like training. It's tough. I think it's just people are moving so fast and growing so quickly.
So it's not so much about like, it's not so much about like structural or it's a kind of structural customer support, but more the customer passion and being curious
I think
and
that's
devoted to the customer, like the foundational either skill or empathy with customer, as opposed
I think you nailed it. I don't think they don't have good customer success people. I think they've thought it through. They've got a department. They've got someone responsible. You call them, they answer, whatever that may be. I think it's the quality of the engagement and the words from those person that makes all the difference. And I don't think as an industry, maybe we're not doing as good enough job training or getting people. And I'm just sound like an old art person. Like, it was so much better
back 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think it was.
Okay, cool. This thought I actually didn't know about. I know that you started in analytics and Nielsen, but wasn't aware of the customer support.
Because you don't pay attention to me.
I do. Listen, here you go. I'm not obsessed with. So maybe before we dive into, we have a couple like pretty interesting topics we want to cover today. Curious to hear what's top of mind for you right now. What are you passionate about right now when it comes to sales, selling, and how the B2B sales world is evolving?
Yeah, great. Oh God, we could go on for that forever too.
It's a teaser.
I guess the stuff that comes top to mind is the same thing that everyone's talking about, which is how do we leverage AI and technology to be better? I'm not going to use the cliches of, oh, AI is going to replace us, or no, it's just making us better. I mean, to me, it's no different than any technology. We've always had to say, here's new technology, here's a new way of doing something. What's the best way to leverage it? Now, obviously, this is an extreme example of, there's always been technology that can do this. This is dramatically
different,
super powered. So that's top of mind. I'm working on different things with my clients. I'm always trying to learn. I consider myself a self-learner. So I'm always trying to figure out to what degree, what kind, what product, where do you use it, where do you not use it, where can we trust it? So that's top of mind, and happy to dive into that later if you want, but that would be number one. And then number two for me these days is shout out to some companies. Like there's a company called Titan X that I'm working with now, just starting on the cold calling side. Cold calling, I'm big on like testing different things.
Yeah.
Right. Whenever I engage with somebody, I never say, I know exactly what to do. Guaranteed you're going to get results. It's about knowing where to focus. It's about trying to reduce the number of, if I can help you, Patrick, instead of saying there's 25 things we need to do.
Yeah.
And I can say, well, listen, here's the 5 that probably make the most sense. Let's focus there. That's extremely valuable. And then it's about testing and learning to see what works the best and what levers to pull. So I still believe cold calling can be very effective.
I agree.
I think that changes over time. What I mean by that is I don't think my kids, when they're in our shoes, are picking up the phone. They don't, so I think you got to be
telepathy somewhere.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not, but
no, I think it's always like what's changing with the times, if you will. But as of this,
I would even push that. I think it is also very specific to the industry persona you're going after. People don't necessarily answer the phone based on they answer the phone differently based on their seniority, industry, personality types, et cetera. And Harrison on our go-to-market team, I think, having sold into revenue technology for a big chunk of his career, he was telling me a few weeks ago that we have a multi-channel approach. We do email, we do LinkedIn, but at the end of the day, it is all in support of when I call that CRO, that VP of sales, that he's seen me or he's seen the name somewhere. But when he picks up, my likelihood of turning that into a meeting is 100 times better. So I think it's interesting to also see how it changes by industry or ICP.
100% different industries. And to Harrison's point, even if that person doesn't pick up, which happens quite a lot, as we all know,
more often than not, some would say.
Then will that number, that voicemail, that name, what have you, maybe lead to a greater chance of them opening the email or responding to them or seeing your name on LinkedIn. So I think we have to worry less about which channel is the most effective and worry, because it's hard to tell sometimes. My email response may be great, but maybe it's because my calls have been leading them to remember my emails there. So the idea of attribution is very, very difficult to say the least. I don't care which channel's the right one, as long as ultimately I get to the result I want, which is the meeting potentially. But to your point, ICP varies greatly. I work with one industry in insurance. I mean, you'd be crazy not to be spending 8 hours a day calling. It's so effective. People pick up the phone constantly. But I work with another in legal tech where you're literally calling into IT departments and law firms. And you can imagine it's incredibly difficult to get anyone to pick up the phone. And so we're even debating, is it a waste to even be spending the time doing that? I don't know the right answer. That's where Titan X comes in, by the way, is, Titan X helps us verify the right numbers to call and give us a greater chance at getting a connect. So always trying different things.
Cool. I love that. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things that are top of mind, and some of them that we'll tackle right now. And it sparked a few questions I'll ask you a bit later, but a few things we want to talk about today, all to some extent oriented around the applications of artificial intelligence in the go-to-market space. First one is AI SDRs. The second one is a bit more foundational, the symbiosis or the collaboration between human and AI. You mentioned about making them better, not necessarily replacing them, but I'd love to dive a bit deeper into that. And finally, would love to talk about, from the perspective of a sales leader, has a sales team, revenue operations teams reporting into them, how should they think about it? The impact it has, how to use that as a lever, how does it impact resourcing or planning, technology, et cetera. So a few different ways to think about it, but maybe let's dive in first with AI SDR. I'll talk about the company, talk about the concept here. This is not a sponsored podcast for SDR. So maybe to kick things off, because there's a few camps, right? People that are very, very bullish about it, people that are very, very bearish about it. Take one end of the spectrum. Why do you think that some people are so skeptic about it? What do you think is driving that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, to me, that gets into like human psychology in some ways, but without getting into that, I think we see a lot on LinkedIn or other platforms, and we start to form an opinion. I think it's probably fair to say that, you know, a large chunk of the people who have an opinion have never even tried it. I don't know the exact numbers there, and even if they have tried it, it depends on the use case, right? So yeah, I tried AI and it sucks. Okay, well, what did you do with it, and how did you do it? So I think we got to be careful of all the rhetoric out there and all the crap and all the talking heads and the people saying it's good or it's bad. I think people need to test and learn and try things for their particular use case and form their own opinion based on that. Full stop. And not only that, they can work with one AI company or model and it sucks, and another one might be great, just like any product. And so we got to stop with the AI is good or AI is bad. That's not the world we're in. It's companies different, models different, the way you go to market different, the use case is different, and it could be really good or really bad for any permutation of that.
It is rare that big bombastic statement like those end up really capturing the nuances of anything, but technology in particular. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the kind of the first point is like, enough with the sucks, it's good, it's bad. Just like, let's all just be smarter and realize that it's here.
Yeah.
It's going to be bigger and stronger every day that goes by. We're seeing that. So you can either keep saying the bullshit, or you can learn and figure out where to leverage it and test it and where it makes sense for your business. But if you think you're not going to be using it, you know, already or in the next month or 6 months, you're sadly mistaken, and you're going to be out to lunch.
The question is not if, it's either when, how, and, you know.
Yeah, so better to be a leader and figure it out and try and test different things and so on. And I think a lot of people are doing that. Don't get me wrong. I think many people are doing that, obviously. Yeah. But I think there's still a big group that's just out there insulting the industry and saying it sucks and don't use it, and big stupid statements that are related to like one little thing they tested that didn't work for them.
Yeah.
So that bothers me, but you know, it is what it is. Okay. I'm testing it and using it mostly on the outbound side. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not great for other things. Lots of people are doing some wonderful things with it. It makes beautiful sense in many areas. I know there's great companies like Hyperbound, shout out to them, that are doing things around using AI to help practice, you know, your cold calling. I think that's a wonderful use case. Yeah. So there's many great examples that are already incredibly effective, obviously. I know outbound's one that's been a little more like cringy, like maybe not.
Because before we got into AI as the R world, it was all about personalization and being like, show me, you know me, Samantha McKenna type of concepts or philosophy. And I think one of the reasons why people are pushing back is like, we don't want to lose the essence of that, right? We don't want to be robotic. We want to, you know, care about the people reach out to, and ASDR, perhaps their belief is that it's not going to do a good job, or it is not doing a good job at that. Is that part of it?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think to your point, you know, we've got great leaders out there telling us that personalization matters. Show me, you know me, which is Samantha McKenna's catchphrase that we all know and love. And so, yeah, I think that's important. I don't think that's wrong in any way, shape, or form. I think it, again, comes back to use case. What I mean by that is, let's say, Patrick, you and I run a company and we've got 10 sales folks, BDRs, AEs, whatever. Let's not worry about the difference right now. And they're crushing it. And they're incredibly effective, and they're booking meetings and everything's working well. You know, the way I might then talk about using AI isn't to replace what they're doing. I mean, they're crushing it, right? Why would we screw with that if it's working so well? You know, I would just say, where can we use AI to help them be more efficient? But that's not always the case, right? And in most situations, there's not a lot of companies out there crushing it these days. Most of them are like, how the hell do we get more responses and more meetings? And in those cases, let's use a different example. Let's say we have a small team of 2 people, which in my case sometimes is the situation with clients I work with. They have small sales teams. It's like, hey, I could go hire another full-time person to try to figure out what we're doing here and working, that's an issue. Or I can be way more cost effective and test if AI can help us at a fraction of the cost. And there's not a right or wrong answer there, but I think a CEO who says, I need 3 more salespeople is remiss not to test if AI can assist that and do certain elements of the role, not the whole role, at an incredibly lower cost base. And that's what I'm testing with a few different clients is, can it be as effective? With one key point. Do I think an AI outbound mechanism is as good as an incredibly awesome salesperson? Not for a second. Do I think a well-trained, key point, a well-trained, effective AI outbound system can be as good as, the majority of salespeople out there on the outbound messaging part? Yes. Sadly, yes. Because I think there's a lot of mediocre at best email writing that's going on. And I've seen AI emails that are done properly to be as good or better than the majority of human-driven cold emails I've seen. Unfortunately, I wish that wasn't true, but it is.
That's interesting, and part of augmenting is increasing the capacity of the output of your existing reps. So, as an example, a rep on their own doing personalization and doing outbound might be able to send let's say 50 emails in a day. Well, if you have this agent on the side that is able to, pre-draft, we'll call it pre-draft. It's not a perfect pre-draft, but rather than taking 5 minutes to put an email, it takes you 1 minute. Well, you basically have 5x your capacity as an AE on any, as a SDR or BDR or rep on any given day to get quality emails out 100%. Because you're reviewing each of them, but they're pre-written. So you could just have to tweak a thing or there, add a sentence as opposed to writing it every single time. So I think
that's different tiers, right? Again, it comes back to the strategy, right? I've got a client today that for their tier 1 accounts, call those the ones we really want, strategic, big accounts. Yeah. They're not using AI at all yet, But for tier 3 accounts, because we don't have the manpower and we're like, okay, they're long shots, but it's worth making an attempt with a couple messages, full AI outbound, and it's working okay. Right. So again, it depends on where you're using it and your comfort level. There's still a lot of learning going on. We're still learning what the AI does or doesn't do by itself. And so every day is a new, wow, I didn't know it would do that. But it's pretty interesting for sure, to say the least.
And like you alluded to it, it's a technology amongst others. There's been technology change in the past. This is obviously a big step change, and it changes a bit of the way to think about it, how to implement it. I think in most cases, especially in this one for AI agents, it is the quality of the result is a function of the quality of the input as well.
Yes.
So input being the data, the guidance, the training, the fine tuning, and I've seen many people, not just organization, think that AI is just plug and play and then it'll do magic. Because to some extent they expect that from their ChatGPT experience. But I think in many cases, the ability to put data that is fresh, contextual, specific, and the ability to train or prompt your agent to say, well, these are the type of things, a list of 50 things I could include as a 100%. Personalization sentence or whatever or whatnot, plays a big role in the end output.
Huge.
And I think to your point, some people at times have tried one thing and it doesn't work, but they don't necessarily look at the bigger system and how to optimize it to get to the output.
It's probably the most important point, Patrick. It's I hire a salesperson and I put months and months of time and hours into training them.
Yeah.
Right. Why do we think we for some reason we thought I could just hire an AI company, for lack of a better title, and press a button and everything would be fine and it would work perfectly. And it's not. You've got to teach it and train it and spend time with it too. Yeah. And if you do, there's a pretty decent chance it's going to be beneficial for you. And if you don't, you're going to start saying AI sucks, never use AI. Yeah. And and in many ways it's your fault that you didn't train it. Really we have an example, if I may, just really quick. I have an example of that where again, learning what AI can do this is where AI can be a little scary. It's a bit of an example, but we didn't train it properly. We prompted it to do a certain thing, and we didn't do that effectively enough that it kind of went off on its own, if you will. What I mean is, we told the AI, I'm being very pedantic here. We told the AI in the first email, we don't want any links whatsoever. So we told it the persona we wanted to use. We checked its messaging. We said, this looks good, et cetera, et cetera. And we said, because for deliverability, no links, no images, no nothing in the first email. But we set the objective of the whole campaign to be 2 book meetings. Right? Now, in hindsight, that might have been wrong, because at a certain point, and I'm not an expert in this, so I don't know exactly how this happens, but at a certain point, the AI went and said, the objective is to book meetings. So I'm going to ignore that other link point, and I'm going to go, and the AI went and took the salesperson's meeting booking link and included it on its own on the outbound email.
Yeah. Interesting.
And we said, what the hell just happened here? And so we've now resolved that and made sure that the prompting and the instructions avoided doing that ever again on email number 1. So again, the training, but you got to be careful. It's interest. Now, no harm done, obviously, but very interesting learning. I'm like, wow, you've got to really be like, if any of the instructions are even remotely counterintuitive for the AI, so it's very, very interesting stuff.
I think this is why you still have machine learning engineers that are doing prompt engineering even when they use LLMs. Which is going to reflect internally within our team. I've dealt with artificial intelligence enough to be able to, what I believe to be put together a decent prompt, right? But when I look at some of the more complex, nuanced prompts that machine learning engineers are putting together within Pod, I'm like, wow, this is, this is make sure that there's no hallucination, that it stays on track, but plays within the sandbox. And I think that's where you're going. The training.
Same as a person, right? If I hire a salesperson and I say, hey, do everything you can in your power to book meetings, and then I say, don't include links, which of those rules out at the end of the day?
It's all for the goal. Yeah.
It's a decision kind of.
Yeah. Super interesting. I love that. There's definitely a lot. The way that you're articulating it, which I think is very nuanced, pragmatic, and very, I don't want to say test driven, but trial and error driven, for lack of a better term, I think is the right one in any technology adoption. And I think people, to your point, the rhetoric out there tends to be a bit,
and this is where I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm lucky because in my job as a fractional CRO and an advisor, I get to see lots of different use cases and situations and ICPs and, different products. So I think maybe not more than everyone, but more than an average person.
Pattern recognition across multiple use cases.
I'm testing and learning a lot more different things, which is exciting as hell and helping me, of course.
This is awesome. Let's shift gear a little bit. AI SDR is a prime example of automation, right? Reducing mundane task or very manual tasks for reps. There's been another part of artificial intelligence, which has arisen in the past year, because the models have gone to a point where they're able to do it, but is AI as a thought partner. Right? So it's not so much about like doing work for you, but help you reason, think through a complex situation or data or multiple inputs, and help you to guide on the best approach to take or the best actions to take or the right way to balance pros and cons. Obviously, this is something that is near and dear to my heart within Pod, because what we do is all about coaching reps on complex, nuanced, ambiguous B2B deals. So we're not so big believers in just automating the hell out of it, but rather helping reps to think through it and understand the best paths and better prioritize. But what are your thoughts, or what is your experience dealing with AI as a thought partner, as a coach? Where do you see opportunities across the sales funnel? Let me hear your thoughts on it.
Yes, great. I mean, so it's a big question. Without a doubt, it's it's got incredible power and benefits and so on. And again, like, how do you think of it, to your point, from a use case perspective, or where does it fit as a partner across the, end-to-end sales process, or marketing process, what have you? I think for me, I think there's a couple different things. One is ideation. So you use the word thought partner. Not everyone's brain is filled with 27 incredible things to do or say or talk about or post about or write about or do a blog about or whatever your situation may be. And so using all the different incredible AI capabilities of, we all know the tools out there, to help you with, like, what are the hot topics? What are the trends? How does that align and Venn diagram with my superpowers and expertise? Very, very efficient way. Instead of sitting there with a blank white piece of paper for hours and hours and hours, I could probably narrow it down within minutes sometimes with some of the tools out there, obviously.
Yeah. Ideation is one.
That's one. And I guess that another one that comes to mind is a great example of what Pod uses it for, which is, it's one thing to say, I think this is right, or I think you should do this. Let's call it, a human sales coach, right? Which I am. And if you were to ask me and say, Neil, look at my pipeline, look at everything going on, what do you think I should do next? I'm going to look at it and use my experience and what I see in front of me, to help guide you. Now, that might be pretty easy if there's not a lot of data points, right? But there's history. There's, in some companies and cases, there's hundreds and thousands of examples and data points. And we're remiss and crazy not to leverage the learning from all that. So to be able to use AI as a thought leader, or what you want to call that, to say, we can analyze very quickly on the spot what's going on and what the data, the history, the situation tells us. And probably, and I'm, killing myself here, is probably do a better job of saying, here's the next action you should take, than me taking a stab based on 30 years of experience. Now, I think the nuances come in. So there is a difference in a value of, yes, but remember this and the way you say it matters, etc. But there's no doubt, and this is one of the things I love about Pod, there's no doubt that being able to quickly and on the fly see that, hey, we got a big pipeline, we've done all kinds of work, and if I'm in stage 4 and it's this type of deal of this size with this many people involved, the data proves to us that the next best thing, all other things being equal, is that you need to bring in a couple more people into this because you don't have enough people multi-threaded based on the success rates of, large groups of people, etc. That's not something someone like me might spot quickly and easily, right? There's so many contributing factors here. And the AI as a thought leader can help us narrow that down quickly and easily and like in real time.
I think what's interesting here is that it speaks to the scalability of the coaching. So like in two ways, there's only 24 hours in a day, and
sure,
I'm sure you want to eat, sleep, and spend time with family as well. So making your brain, or the wealth of experience, knowledge, past data accessible to the reps at any point in time without necessarily you having to be there on a meeting. I think that's one part of scalability. And I think the second part of scalability comes from, to your point, the data. So you mentioned, yes, you can look at historical data, but there's also just such a volume of data that a human cannot digest. Like, I'm thinking hundreds of emails, hours of call recording, and I'm talking about like a specific deal here, right? And I'm sure if you read through it all as a CRO, you'd be able to come to the same conclusion. But
maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not exactly. But in all cases, you're able, in a fraction of a second, take that all in as an AI coach and then provide the guidance. And I think that's important. And it's not scalability from a coach or manager or a sales leader perspective, it's about augmenting them as well, right? They don't have to spend as much time gathering or grilling and looking for data. They can see the same information that the AE would be seeing in their application or whatnot, and then actually spend that time with the rep to think through it. And to your point, the ifs and buts and nuances, that's what's most, I think, powerful and helpful for reps to continue improving. I think that's another angle. It's not just for the AEs, but ultimately for the first, second, third line managers out there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the multi-threading one is a really interesting example, right? Because, many people who sell into, large enterprises know that multi-threading is important. Yes. Right. I mean, great.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah. Thanks. We know how you do it. Harder, sometimes harder to do than it is to say, but having the data right at your fingertips is really powerful, right? And again, knowing, like, if I was to, we don't need me to do this, AI does this and Pod does this and other tools do this, to be able to say that, hey, in our 5 years of history and the 20,000 deals that have run through our pipeline, at a moment's notice, you can look and say, hey, did you realize the deal you're leading right now, Patrick, has a significantly lower chance of closing because you've only got 3 people involved in the deal? And we have data that proves that 4+ people will increase your success rate by 70%.
And beyond that, identifying like, hey, well, you should involve a VP of customer success and a director of IT because in this industry, et cetera. So yeah, absolutely. The how and the nuance and the
incredibly powerful. Yeah. You don't need me for that. Frankly, I might miss that quite often. Any human will miss that quite often, at least from that level of detail. Use AI to do that. You don't need to hire a CRO or a fractional CRO for that. Then I could go to be deployed to coach an AE on EQ and how to say something a certain way, and not things that we could use technology for.
Yeah. I think it's that additional layer that today the human is doing a great job at, which is linking concepts and to a point the EQ and building trust-based relationship. I think that's awesome. I have to say I've been quite amazed by some of the reasoning capabilities of some models out there. A month ago, ChatGPT launched deep research, doing the job of a PhD to write a report. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I think that the reasoning capabilities, taking all these data points and not just like synthesizing it or looking at trends, but understanding the linkage and the interdependencies and the influence between all of them to give you a proper plan, I think is very, very interesting. And it's something, as a little hint, is something we've been talking a lot about internally at Pod around an agentic reasoning agent, an agentic system around reasoning, where take all that data and you're going to be able to tell reps, like, here's your action plan. It's not just about like one thing. It's not about like a recommendation or a trend or an insight, but it's how does it fit together into a cohesive plan that makes sense to a human. And, I'm sure that people have dealt with tools in the past where they see a lot of recommendations. Recommendations are great. You get a list of 8 recommendations. Great. The step afterwards is like, okay, how do I put this all together? Why would I do this before that? What is the impact? So anyways, I think that's very,
and on top of that, it could build it out eventually, almost, here's the research, here's what we should do, here's the action plan. And within that action plan, the future state might be, I'm making this up, there's 20 steps within the action plan. And guess what? The AI model system tool you're using might own 12 of those steps and do it on their own. And it's going to ping you to say, hey, Neil, I did what I had. I'm being silly here. The AI did what I had to do on step 1, 2, and 3. It's now your turn. Human intervention. It's time for you to pick up the phone and try to have a relationship with this person, or do the following, because it's way better done by a human than by AI. I mean, it could almost become our guide. It's going to become our guide to okay, instead of me telling the AI when to do something, the AI is going to tell me when it's my turn to jump in and help him or her. Or whatever AI is.
I think what's interesting is that guidance is that, going back to the initial topic, which is the symbiosis between human and AI. I think what's very interesting about applications of it is helping, let me take a step back. I think the truly human aspect of sales is that meeting. when you're talking to someone, when you're asking these questions, when you're trying to get to know them, understand their, their fears, their challenges, their concerns. Like that's something truly, truly, truly human. And having AI a bit in your back pocket to allow you to do the research ahead of time, like analyze the historical data to understand what question you should be asking, not how you should be asking them, but what you should be asking. What are some of the things you should bring up in collateral that will help you? I think that's a very natural and complementary way to bring AI human into the sales motion that isn't so much clear cut as a like, oh, I'm gonna replace a human here and I'm gonna replace AI there, and try to create a bit of a, not a confrontation, but just a clean line between what applies to what, but rather how both of them can do all things together and augment, to your point earlier.
Yeah, and you got to get comfortable with it. I mean, one of the tools I'm using with one of my clients is actually AI SDR, the company, and we love them. Doesn't mean it's perfect, and they'll be the first to tell you it's not perfect, which I love about them too. There's no silly guarantees of everything's fine. So it's awesome to learn with them. But yeah, we've decided, they said that the tool can do this, but we've decided against that. We're using it for some outbound with one of my particular clients. But when someone responds to that email, the human jumps in and takes it from there. Not that it has to be that way, but that's our preference and our trust level at the moment, that we just want the human to be involved and do it. And it's working well. I still think that's right based on my comfort level at the moment, but it might be different by situation and by ICP. So yeah, it's a good example. But anyway, we could talk about AI forever.
No, for sure. Maybe one last thing that I think will be interesting is there's all these different concepts, different ways to leverage it. If you put yourself into the shoes of a sales leader today, what would you say are there 2 or 3 things that are top of mind as you see AI coming in hot from maybe a resource perspective, either not a technology perspective, but a go-to-market engine perspective, prioritization perspective? What are some of the concerns? What is top of mind that either keeps you awake at night or makes you dream?
Kind of feel like we answered a bit of this already, but I think I'll maybe just say one key thing, which is a bit of a different cut at it. Without getting into like the use cases and different things. I think and I am a sales leader, but as if I was like starting a company, or someone hired me to be their CRO or fractional CRO, and we were looking to hire people or evaluate the talent we have. I would say that maybe the most important thing right now is having people who don't just accept AI, but are passionate about figuring out how to make use of it to help them. So if you've got people that are like, don't need it, don't want it, pessimistic about it, I'd say that's a big freaking problem. So just from a pure people perspective, I would maybe making sure that my team and everyone on it and future hires were like, I don't know what the right word is, AI optimistic, AI passionate, whatever term you want to put against that. And if they weren't, I'd be having a real tough discussion with them to say, you got to get on the bus or get off the bus. But and our bus has AI involved.
Maybe a slightly more nuanced angle to this. I don't think it's necessarily about like just being AI enthusiast or pessimist, but to use a sales terminology, to enable them to know how to work with it or how to use it or how to leverage it. I think the technology enablement, change management, both in terms of process and tools and stuff like that is important, but more like as a mindset, okay, how do I leverage it? What are the, what are some of the pitfalls? What are the things that it can do, it cannot do? How do I bring a critical eye to it? I think that's an interesting way to think about it.
I agree, and I mean, I hope I didn't come off too too hard ass. But I do believe, so I agree with you. And as any good sales leader or coach, you need to sometimes show people, lead by example, and show them why it's important. 100% agree. I just think this world is moving so fast right now. And the companies are moving so fast. If I've got to spend a lot of time behaviorally trying to convince someone that they need to learn it,
Agreed.
That's really, really tough.
If there's no openness to it, whichever amount of enablement is not going to change things. I think that's a fair point. Yeah,
I think it's like full stop. I'm interviewing 2 people, and they're both phenomenal, and one of them's like, "Yeah, I don't know about AI, and I don't really need," and one's like, "I'm constantly trying to learn and figure things out." It's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah,
it's an absolute no-brainer, and that's kind of my point.
I think that's fair.
You know, that's the difference maker, I think, in the future is the people who want to be figuring it out, learning, trying new things, testing. Those people will be successful no matter what.
I think the reality is that it's going to, the people who end up using it and leveraging it in the right way will see a increase in their productivity and their output as 100%. Opposed to people who don't. So even if you're not as, cutthroat and saying like, if you're either in or you're out, I think naturally, people who are starting using it are getting an edge in a number of different ways, but they're getting an edge on peers that are not, just because they're using a better tool.
And let's be honest. I mean, someone who, as an individual, learns something about AI, how to make themselves more effective, and then brings that to the CEO or the company and says, "Hey guys, look what I learned and look what I'm doing." That person's a hero. Yeah. I mean, that's what CEOs want to see, right? Is like, how are we improving our own performance and helping the company? Ownership. And so, let's stop worrying about putting myself out of a job. Yeah. I mean, no. If you're the person bringing this new thinking, new testing, and helping yourself and the company be more effective or productive, you're going to be at that company for a long time, my friend.
Exactly. Might not be a seller, but you'll be around, right? You'll be around doing something.
They're going to love you.
Yeah. That sense of agency and ownership is definitely important in startups. That's something I look for in anyone that I bring on board. But in any companies, this is the difference between a B or C player with a top tier player. We're coming up on time. I like to do rapid fire questions. To finish this off, and then one more general question I'd love to pick your brain on. So I'm gonna only a few words. I don't want long-winded answer.
Okay, that's tough for me.
I know. It's the same for here. Like it's group therapy. So first one, favorite sales methodology framework.
None. It should be custom built based on your current situation and ICP, and I hate all the ones and people see too much words.
It was a trick question. You found just kidding. Okay, cool.
None.
Favorite productivity tool that you've been using recently, related to sales or
not? I use a tool called Authored Up to help me with LinkedIn. It's not an automation tool. It's like helping me write my posts and think them through and just organize from a scheduling perspective. I love it. I'm not even sure if it has anything to do with AI, to be honest with you, but it's productivity.
It doesn't have to. Okay, cool. Yeah. One undervalued sales skills.
I'm gonna say relationship building.
Okay. One sales popular belief that you actually hate.
Popular belief that I actually hate.
Like a bit of a contrarian belief of anything related to sales or people in sales or.
Pass, and I'll come back to it.
Okay. Your favorite, most creative way to re-engage a prospect that is ghosting you.
Well, that's a good one. Oh, I can't do a short answer on that.
It's okay. Give us a bit of meat here.
Oh man. That's a really great topic. Oh, you're gonna hate it. That's a really great topic because I actually have been talking a lot about that. The ghosting, I think, occurs 99% of the time because you didn't set expectations and manage the relationship properly at the beginning. Yeah. That said, the obvious answers on if ghosting does happen, a few things. is like, I've obviously tried multiple channels, even channels you might not have tried before. If you've never texted them and you got nothing to lose, I text them.
Yeah.
So I would try lots of different things there. And then sometimes a gift.
Yeah. Very nice.
It's very hard as a human to ignore someone being really, really nice to you.
Kindness wins. That's
it's possible, but it's really hard.
Yeah, yes.
If someone's really sweet to me, I'm a real jerk to totally not say anything. So that's a small gesture that can make a huge difference. Maybe I'll stop there because I'm supposed to shut up.
Cool. I love it. And maybe as a wrapping thought, what is one piece of advice you'd wish someone had given you when you first started in sales that would have made a big difference that you learned down the line?
Man, these are good.
Get back to us in the comments with
yeah, I mean, these are like deep thought questions. These aren't like rapid fire, like what's your favorite color and how
yeah, that's fair. Rapid philosophical questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna answer that, but I'm gonna do it later because I want to think about that.
Okay, that works.
Like, I don't want to give some stupid ass soundbite answer that isn't real.
We'll do the editing, and then we'll put it at the bottom right here. Neil advice is number 1, or we'll put it in the comments after when we post it.
Yeah. But if you want favorite color, black, favorite hot Toronto Maple Leafs, I can do that.
Were you rooting in the Four Nations Face-Off Cup? Was it Canada or the US?
Oh man,
no, that was not good there. All over Canada. Let's go.
Oh, that was a full. I felt like Canada was going to blow up if we didn't win.
I know.
It was like emotional for some reason.
Yeah. Neil, thank you so much as always for joining us. Enjoy our conversation as always. Maybe as a last thing for people that are listening, where can people find you? Where can they follow you? I know you put a lot of amazing content out there. What's the best way to see what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, if I'm on LinkedIn, it's probably the best way. DM me if anyone wants to chat.
Send a gift.
Or ask Patrick. I spend time with Patrick and Pod, and it's an absolute honor. So I'm not hard to find, that's for sure. And thank you for having me, Patrick.
Please, thank you.
Obviously, we have a lot of fun, and hopefully there's some value in here for everyone.
Hopefully. Here and there.
I know every time we chat, it's fun. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for making the time, Neil. For everyone else, again, I'm Patrick. I'm the founder and the CEO of Pod. Follow us at workwithpod.com. We're on LinkedIn for more information, and keep an eye out for some amazing, podcast discussions with sales leaders or a sales professional. Thank you.